A troubling new report paints a gloomy picture for consumers who use credit cards. Identity fraud cases last year were at their highest levels in more than a decade, and this despite added security measures. WSJ's AnnaMaria Andriotis covers the consumer credit industry and joins us now to discuss. Hi, AnnaMaria.
Hello.
I'm kind of not surprised to hear this because my husband was one of these millions of identity theft victims last year. This happened in our own family. But I thought those chips we all have on our credit cards were supposed to help prevent this.
Okay, so the answer is a little complicated. Chip cards do make cards safer, and the people who use them, it can help to make them safer. But there's a lot of areas where chip cards aren't yet being used. And that's really one of the main drivers to why we saw the identity fraud numbers increase.
And the numbers are crazy. Let's talk about that. Over 15 million people last year?
Right. Right, and so that is an 18% increase from 2015, and the result was about $16 billion in losses, and that is the highest it's been since at least 2003 when the number started being tracked.
Amazing. We were all under the impression that the problem was getting better, but no. So a big part of this is all the online purchases that are being made fraudulently, correct?
Right. So when you think about it, a chip card, there's nowhere to actually insert the chip when you're shopping online. So in most cases, what are you doing? You're just putting in your card number, expiration date, security code on the card. And if there's a breach or fraudsters somehow gain access, that information is susceptible to being reused.
Right. So that's the good old-fashioned way of stealing credit card numbers.
Sure.
People are just doing it online.
Right.
But there was also an increase in some rarer forms of fraud as well.
Right. So we saw what the study showed was that you had cases where there were brand new accounts being opened in people's names, where somehow the fraudsters were able to do this without the consumer realizing it and without even the lender realizing it.
And then was there an increase in people actually opening fraudulent accounts as well?
Right. So that's one of the rarer cases that we're seeing actually becoming more.
Opening fraudulent accounts and also taking over existing accounts.
taking over, right? And that gets really tricky for consumers because they'll change your login information or some other identifying information, and then you can't get in, and you're trying to prove yourself to the lender that you are not the fraudster.
Absolutely. And so in many cases, are the credit card companies and the banks covering these losses?
So in general, when there are losses tied to credit cards, they are covered because usually the bank will step in.
Right.
There have been some changes in the last couple of years, but the bottom line for consumers is that they should still be protected, and for the most part, they shouldn't have to actually pay out of pocket to cover fraudulent transactions occurring on their credit cards.
Absolutely. And so a big piece of this, as we said earlier, are these online transactions.
Right.
So what are the banks doing to target that? Are they using a little bit of the technology from the chip card and putting it online?
So there's a lot going on right now, and in the U.S., things are still in the early stages. What we'll all be hearing a lot more of is tokenization, this term, where basically what happens is that you have the card networks like the MasterCards of the world, and you have the banks and the retailers. What everybody's trying to work on right now is more ways in which these unique codes are what's being passed around between these three parties.
So that each purchase has a unique code online, the same way that it does with the chip card.
Right, so that even if there is some kind of fraudulent activity and that unique code is taken by the fraudsters, it can't be reused.
Right. Okay, so what can we do? What can consumers do to protect themselves, AnnaMaria?
Okay, so first thing, I have to say that it's most important to focus on the free steps that people can take, some really basic things. One is to check your credit reports, and you can do this in many cases for free. And what you can do is basically looking at your credit reports, you'll see whether there are any accounts.
How often do you recommend checking your credit reports?
Okay, so you can check your credit reports for free on a site called annualcreditreport.com. And there you have an opportunity to see your credit reports from the three major credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And basically what this helps do is if you see that there's an account on your credit report that you never opened, that's a clear-cut sign that something is wrong.
Absolutely. Is there a limit to how many times you can check for free?
There is a limit on an annual basis of how many times you can check, but with each passing year, that starts from scratch again. Also, it's just important to keep track on your accounts. I know it sounds really basic, but checking your credit card statements, your checking account statements, your debit card, what's going on with them on a weekly, maybe even monthly basis, the sooner you catch something, the easier or the relatively easier it'll be to try to resolve it.
Stay on top of it. Do you recommend these identity protection companies? I mean, they can often be quite expensive. Some people have them even for their children.
Well, I think people should focus on the free steps first. I really do. And then what we've seen in some cases, unfortunately, after the fact, when breaches have occurred, is that there have been offers of allowing consumers to view their credit reports for free more times than they otherwise would be able to. I really think at this stage, consumers should just focus on some of the more common sense steps and the help that's available for free.
Great advice, AnnaMaria. Thank you so much for that.